Welcome to the Limitless Podcast. I'm joined by someone who has become one of the most influential voices for dyslexia and neurodiversity across the UK defence. Lisa is a senior commercial manager at Defence Equipment and Support, overseeing complex, high-value procurement portfolios and leading teams across the UK and overseas. She's also the co-chair and one of the founders of the members of the Defence Dyslexic Network, a community that has transformed how dyslexia is thought of and supported and celebrated within defence. Her work has earned her a national recognition, including the Women in Defence and Inspirational Award in 2023. She's a passionate speaker and strategic leader, and I'd like to welcome you now, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed that intro. Sometimes it's a bit strange hearing these things back yourself.
Yeah, I'd rather not hear those things back myself. And I'm like, who is this person? She sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think we're naturally we're not the best in the UK, are we, for promoting ourselves?
No.
But it is only when you start reading back some of your own achievements you realise actually, you know, what an amazing thing you have done. You just don't always, you're just in the moment, and you don't always celebrate those moments as much as you should really do. So yeah, I suppose really the opening question is let's start with your current role. You know, let's start. You know, what is your current role, and how, you know, how's that started?
So my current role is a senior commercial officer, which means I manage a portfolio of contracts on behalf of the MOD. It's not ever a career that I thought I would have. I fell into it 14 years ago and never left. So I've only been working in MOD for 8 years, coming up to 8 years now. So it's still quite a long sort of period of time, really, but it's something that has kind of grown in interest for me. So I sort of started out working in other government departments doing it, didn't really have the kind of spark for it. And then I came over to the MOD and it kind of felt more purposeful. It means that we're actually managing contracts, buying in equipment, supporting our troops on the front lines. And that kind of feels way more purposeful than just buying pencils for offices. So that's kind of where I'm up to today.
Yeah, and obviously with current times as we are, it's probably even more prominent than it ever has been. I suppose really, you know, I suppose it brings more interesting that you're purchasing things that you're buying within those roles, and I guess you're meeting a lot of different types of people across the defence sector. So you built a career across several major government departments. What are the key turning points that shaped the path that you were in? I mean, you know, tell us a little bit about how you got into the procurement side, and then how have you got into this role then? Because obviously, I'm guessing it wasn't just a straight thing that you was at school, sat there one day with your careers officer saying, I'd like to do procurement for the MOD. So there's a big gap there. How did it lead you to that role?
Yeah, you're right. I did not sit with my careers officer going, oh, I really want to be a procurement officer. No, I absolutely didn't. I didn't even know what procurement was before I actually took my first role in procurement. So I had gone through school and education without my diagnosis of dyslexia. So education was really tough for me. It always felt like the uphill battle. I got to the end of high school. I reluctantly did A levels because I really had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that point. And I did really badly at A levels. I got a D and an E, and I really struggled to even get a D and an E. And I thought, you know what am I going to do next? And I kind of thought, well, I could go and get a job. I was just like, I don't know what kind of job I want. At the time, I was working part-time in McDonald's. And I knew McDonald's wasn't going to be the career for me for the rest of my life, because I just felt like I needed more than just that. So I had the bright idea to go to university, which I was undiagnosed at the point of deciding that. And I thought, well, brilliant idea, just go to university. That'll solve my problems for the next 3 years. And university is really tough, actually. I had to sort of manage my own time and manage myself, and not have teachers kind of constantly at me trying to organise me. And as I later found out after my dyslexia diagnosis, I've also got ADHD. So kind of being left to my own devices at that point, I was a bit like, oh, this is really difficult. So I did get through university undiagnosed. I got a 2-2 in my degree, and do you know what? I was over the moon with the 2-2. I was like, this is brilliant. I was the first one in my family to have gone to university as well. And do you know what? I was pretty proud of myself just to make it through.
What was that degree in?
So my degree is in early years development and education. I'd sort of loosely decided that maybe being a teacher might be a good idea. I have no idea why I thought it would be a good idea, because during my degree I had to do elements of going into classrooms and assisting and doing a bit of teaching and stuff like that. And I'd really decided actually I really hated it. I absolutely hated it. The thought of standing in front of children just looking at me with like expecting me to have all the answers, I was just like, this is awful. And having to do kind of like writing on the board and like reading in front of them, all of those things that I'd not necessarily thought through, I was like, this is horrendous. This is absolutely not for me. I don't want to do this. So I'd sort of already decided that kind of halfway through my degree, but I just thought, you know what, I've done half my degree at this point. I might as well just get the degree, have it into my sort of CV, I guess, and that would be enough. And it, it did open a door for me. So when I left university, I was still at the point in my life going, what is next? What am I supposed to do next? Because I have no idea. Um, and I applied for a job in the DWP. It was only a fixed term contract, but I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I needed a high qualification to be able to get that job. And I really surprised myself because I did get the job, and I was just like, oh, okay. So it was kind of like, it's sort of a bit of a series of kind of not unfortunate events, but kind of weird events that kind of led me to starting my journey within the civil service. Um, so as I said, that job was only a fixed term contract. So I did that for a little while. And I really loved that job, I'll be honest. It was one of the best times because I was still relatively young, still kind of like enjoying just having fun with people and stuff like that. And it was quite like, it was just nice to just be a part of. But it came to the end and I was like, I need a new job. What am I going to do? And then it happened that this job in the Home Office came up. So that really kind of put me in the path of procurement. I had no idea what procurement was. I just needed a job and it was close to home and it paid enough money. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. If I hate it, I can always look for something different. And then I never left. It kind of left me to just, so from the Home Office, I went onto a different government department and then on to the MOD, where I am now. So, bit of a long-winded way.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. So you like you said, you struggled at school, which I'm dyslexic, and I did all the way through my school. I had some crazy ambitions of certain jobs that I just never went down that path because I knew I couldn't get those grades and I couldn't then get onto the next level. Did you have any sort of wild idea jobs when you were at school that put you off for ever applying before going down this path?
I didn't really have any aspirations because I kind of felt like I had this deep, dark secret buried within me. And if anybody ever discovered that, then I'd be totally unemployable anyway. So, kind of just getting through each day and making that sort of slowly trudging through treacle, it felt like at points in my life where I was like, well, if I can just get to the next part, if I can just get my GCSEs, if I can just do this, it's always that kind of like push, and then it always came to the bit of like, well, what's next? What should I be aiming for next? And I don't think I ever really had much of a plan of what was next. It was a case of just filling gaps in my life to
Yeah,
just find some sort of purpose.
yeah. I mean, for me, it sounds like you sort of you wanted to keep your head under the radar enough that you didn't obviously get spotted that you had these sort of like challenges, but on top of that, it seems like you felt guilty that that actually you shouldn't have had those, and that there was a bit of a shame of that. So by keeping your head down and just getting to the next stage and hoping there's another stage after that, you never worried about where the next stage was as long as you could get through each stage at a time. And that's how everybody. I mean, like I said, we've all had different journeys in the same sort of way. So I'm guessing then the way you're saying that is you then was never diagnosed. So did you manage to completely keep under the radar at school? Did you get any help with timings and GCSEs? I certainly, when I was there, I got basic help and a little bit of extra time doing my GCSEs. Whether 10 minutes per hour has got any benefit when you struggle to read and get that out there. It helped a tiny bit for me. Did you get anything like that at school? Any support?
So I left infant school, barely being able to write my own name or read. And I went to a different junior school to the infant school I'd gone to, and they noticed then when I went to that junior school that I was sort of falling behind a little bit. And they did implement a little bit of extra support for me, but there was no kind of hint at any real diagnosis or anything like that. It was just a case of, well, she's just a bit behind, so we'll just support her a bit more. And that was fine during junior school, although I hated it because at the time it was like taking me out of the classes or taking me out of my lunch or my break time to go and do these extra things. And I was always a bit like, oh God, I am that other child that like everywhere, all the other kids are like looking at me going, oh my God, look at her, she's so special. And it kind of alienates you. And that was just, it was quite like, I can understand what the benefit was for me, but the kind of impact of it was just the bullying that I kind of went through. It never stopped. It started right at the beginning because I was that other kid, I was different. And then it went right through to the end of junior school. And then when I left junior school, I went to a different high school again. And it was the same issues. I was just a fish out of water. I just couldn't cope. And again, there was no diagnosis. They put me in a special reading class that happened after school, which I absolutely hated because it was like, well, now I've got to use my own time to do something that I really, really hate doing.
I feel your pain on that one. I had the same. There's nothing worse than hating something and then losing the thing you love.
Yeah,
Like you say, your play times, your lunch times, and your after school to do something you hate, and then also feel ashamed of having to do it.
yeah,
It's crazy, and but it is one of those things that everybody listening to this with any sort of those types of like learning difficulties, you feel that shame, you feel
yeah,
the sort of disappointment having to lose all those things. So it's totally understandable.
yeah,
And this is why it is so important to talk about these things, because I think we need to remove that shame, we need to
yeah,
remove that guilt, and even more so, not just for children, but also for those adults that are still hiding and still,
yeah,
sort of keeping that shame to themselves because they've never been given an opportunity, like I guess yourself has and I have, to be proud of your dyslexia, because it gives you a different skill set than other people. And that's where I think that's where the importance is. But I totally understand your story. I was bullied at school, not just by the pupils, but also by the teachers.
yeah,
And those people should have been there to support you as your the adult in the room, and they were actually joining in, if not starting the actual behavior. So it sounds like you've gone through a very, very similar path to myself and others that I've spoke to. Obviously you got through those, each challenge, and that's what a lot of dyslexics do. We sort of look for the next gatepost and try and get to that one, and if you can get there, I'll think about the next stage. You don't ever think or dream of the end stage because you feel like you can't.
no,
And it seems like that's what you've just said with your journey. You got through your GCSEs enough, it sounds like, to get to A level, but then the A levels obviously wasn't for you, which you probably knew they weren't.
oh, I knew they
But
would.
you probably wasn't given any opportunities that you felt you could go down the path. I was fortunate, I was quite a creative, and so I went down a creative path, knowing the A levels wasn't suited for myself. But for yourself, you sound like you've done a great job of getting to each stage and then finding, right, well, there's an opportunity, I'm going to go there. So after you left, did you say it was DWP? So that's
Yeah,
Department of Work Pensions, is it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, just making sure. There's that many acronyms for these
I know.
these days. So from there, you've then said you then saw the opportunity for procurement at the MOD, was it?
Home office.
Home Office, sorry.
Yeah.
Obviously, at that stage, then I'm assuming you've not got a qualification within that. You've got your degree, and but it isn't actually in that. So I'm guessing you've taken that, you've gone for that role, hoping to learn on the job, and they've accepted you because you've said you got there. So how did that then play out when you got that role? If you hadn't gone down the route of learning procurement and that kind of role to start with?
I think at first, like, I think I have really trained myself to be the master of masking. And, that mask was firmly in place for me. I can pretend to be a completely neurotypical and then in air quotes normal person. And I've built, and I hate to use the word resilience, I've built all of this resilience up throughout the entire of my life. But after so many knockbacks and so many like, oh, you can't do that. You're never gonna amount to anything. We're never gonna see your name in a newspaper. So I had a teacher tell me that they'd never see my name in a newspaper because I graduated after a degree. And I was like, why wouldn't you? And I think part of that kind of really stuck with me because clearly I can remember it now. But like, I was like, I could do that. I think it's sheer stubbornness that's maybe kind of got me to that point. But
can I just ask on that point? This is sometimes you look back and you think some of the most scarring things that have happened to you at school, throughout your life, really. There's always, I find a lot of deep thinkers like we are hold on to a lot of those things and they'll flash back over and over, things that may have happened when you were 5, 6 or 7, can pop back into my mind of, as much as they were painful and there's still a scar I find on my thinking. Do you also think those people who've done those things have also weirdly pushed you forward because you've been determined to prove them wrong? And can those things, as bad as they are, help in a weird sort of way?
yeah, I think they have. And I think it's because if you tell me no, you can't do it, then I will try and prove you wrong. That, I will try and do it. And, actually, you're just talking nonsense. Like, just because in your head you don't see a potential, then that's your problem. It's not my problem. I'm going to prove you wrong. So in a weird way, yeah, it probably has kind of propelled me forward to kind of go, well, do you know what? You're talking rubbish. I'm going to actually prove you wrong. I'm going to go and do it. So when I kind of started my procurement career, I had no idea there were qualifications in procurement. I barely understood what procurement meant. I just applied for a role and I thought, well, I'll be answering a couple of emails, I'll be helping a couple of people, and I'll just hope to God that I do all right at it. And I kind of did all right at it. I did fine at it until I had to start the qualification. And then I absolutely just floundered because it was exam based, it was online learning, you had to teach yourself on an online course. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. That a sheer amount of reading and having to take in all of that information and then be confronted with an exam paper that was essay based. You'd have to write a series of essays based on the questions. I was just like, I cannot retain all of this information that you need me to regurgitate it into an essay. I don't have the ability to put those words back onto paper. I can't do it. And I tried 2 exams and I failed both of them. And I was like, maybe I'm not right for procurement. Maybe I should look for something different. And actually, that's kind of, it was part of the reasons why I ended up going to the MOD. Because the MOD offered different routes to do the qualification. It wasn't a case of just exam routes. It was actually, there's a coursework route that you can do, which absolutely suited me down to the ground because I can do coursework. I can get somebody to proofread my work. I can get that level of support. My dad was a teacher and he was my proofreader throughout all of my qualifications because he knew that I struggled with that element of stuff and he knew that he could be the one to help me he could be my co-pilot basically. I mean, we have co-pilot now, which is brilliant, but yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting because you've gone into the role, you've been able to do the role, and then as soon as somebody says now to move to the next level, you're going to have to take on some exams and learning in the traditional way that we've all struggled with, and to prove to everybody that you can do something that you're already doing. And it does seem crazy that in all the time since I was at school and since you'll have been at school, that nothing seems to have changed in that world. It seems to be where the world is only designed for learning and proving that you've got a skill for learning for 25% of the world who can read, soak that information up and regurgitate that on an exam. And then there's so many other levels and slices of learning that people do in the other 75%, the likes of us, where we can get on with things, we can think, we can, like I said, the coursework side of things, again, it's so much, powerful that you can do it in your own time. And then the writing thing. Now, I would definitely say, and I'm guessing with your last comment, is having the things like the Copilot, as in Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, is now going to become a game changer for people that do struggle, because we know what we want to say, but we don't always know how to write it in a way that really suits the end person reading that. And really, it's not just about having tools to rewrite things. It's also about the world being able to adapt with technology so that people can learn in their learning style. Because I think it sounds like, you could have possibly even got, you've had to do a little bit of zigzagging, because you've gone, well, I can't do the exams there, so I'm going to have to go there. And it's worked out well for you. But, the future generations coming up, should they have to zigzag? Should they not be able to give them those opportunities and say, for myself, I dreamed of being an architect. And I didn't do that route because of having to get certain exams and certain results at GCSE, then at A level to get to university. So I went down a different creative route myself that still brought me into those different sectors, whether it was architecture or automotive or engineering, subjects I liked. But it sounds like you've had to zigzag and find your way and avoid certain potholes of, today potholes are everywhere, but certain potholes that to get you where you are. And it feels really unfair that we're there's only a small part of the world that get given the way they learn and the rest of us just struggle along. So obviously you're now at the MOD, you've now done your coursework and things like that. I'm guessing from that got you to a certain level. What are those qualifications for people who don't know? What did you need to achieve?
So you have to do your Chartered Institute of Procurement, something else. I can't even remember what it is.
It's abbreviated SIPs.
Yeah.
I can cheat a little bit because that's what my brother does.
Okay, again.
So I've heard that phrase before. I wouldn't have known that a few years ago.
Yeah.
So you've got your SIPs at this point now in the MOD.
Yeah.
And how many years ago was that now?
Oh my gosh, probably. I think I did that in 2018. So quite a while ago.
So you've managed to get that. So obviously at that point then, where did that lead you into your career? I've got things like leadership and, did that start meaning you were starting to build up and run teams for yourself? What was that next stage?
So it kind of opens the doors to you having your own ability to sign off paperwork and stuff like that. And it goes to that being able to work independently within your team. And I did have a team of people underneath me. And sometimes that's been challenging because it's like you almost feel like that imposter syndrome come up of you because you're like, oh my God, these people are like looking at me for these answers and stuff. And I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, which I think is so common amongst people with dyslexia or any kind of neurodiversity, really, because we have always got that sense of, oh, I'm never good enough. And I think that's kind of instilled in us from a very early age. And I think as you get older, that sense of, I'm not good enough just magnifies because you find yourself in different jobs and different scenarios and you think, I have no idea how I've got myself to this position. I have no idea. And then people are going to find out that I have no idea. And then I'm going to be kicked out on my ear. But it's not happened today, touch wood.
I genuinely believe, I think everybody thinks like that. And I've spoken to many people across the board with all sorts of sort of different neurodiversities, as well as what you'd class as somebody who doesn't think they've got anything like that. I think everybody in some form has their own unique way. I'm not finding that there's anybody that you can use the horrible word of normal, because there isn't a normal. We're all different and we've all different. And that's where, you get labelled, labels, and then people who haven't got those labels are classed as just normal, and it seems crazy. But the one thing I would say is I think everybody has those doubts, but do you think they're even more heightened when you have got that label and that's where your doubts kicked in?
So, Yeah, because to be fair though, I didn't even have the label at that point. I only had my diagnosis in 2020, and that was for dyslexia. But I just think there was always that thing in me that was like, no, I'm not good enough. And like, I think the more times you're told that when you're younger, that really sticks with you. And it's like, it's not a case of just teachers telling you that, children around you are telling you that, and you just have that negative perception of yourself and your ability to achieve anything, and that just heightens your kind of anxiety around this, I think. And I'm not saying other people don't have the same, but it's often said that neurodiverse people are told like 10,000 times more or something stupid that we're not good enough within our early years, and you think, God, that's mad. But I think I would hope that's changed now. I see it a lot.
Would you say with yourself then? Because my next question was going to be: is were you open with your team? But you've just said at 2018 you were starting this role, and 2020 was the first time you actually got a proper diagnosis. So at that point, you're still doing that hiding under the radar, not hoping everybody spots the mistakes that you'll make naturally
Yeah.
because of that. So obviously at that point you're still hiding that. So what led you to finding out in 2020, going through diagnosis to find that out?
So I'd always wondered about it. And then at the same sort of time, we were going through things with my son. He was having very similar difficulties as me when I was younger. And the SBLD lead in his school said, "Oh, you know, there's he's showing signs of SBLD. It's worth kind of maybe exploring that." And obviously led into dyslexia. And I was like, well, pretty sure this applies to me as well. So maybe it's kind of time to explore it for both of us. And that's what I did. So by my son getting his diagnosis, I then got my diagnosis because I was like, I think when you go for that diagnosis in later life, there is always that like real worry that you're not going to be dyslexic, because actually that would just mean that you are just stupid, and you know all of those fears that you've had before and all that negativity is just true. You are just that person, you're just not good enough. So I was pretty worried that they was going to come back and they were going to say to me, no, you're not dyslexic. But thankfully, thankfully, I think it was thankfully, she said to me on the day of my assessment that I was dyslexic. And I think for me that was the light bulb moment in my life. That was the marker for things turning around for me and how I kind of got through life, actually. I don't know, that sounds like such a dramatic statement. I can hear myself saying it and I think, God, how dramatic is she? But it really was, because it just lifted this weight that I had no idea I'd been carrying, and just kind of went, do you know what? There is a reason all of this has happened to you. All of this kind of like unable to grasp things straight away, and this whole thing of like not having a clue which is left and right. I mean, like when I was little, I had a pair of red wellies and I wrote L and R on them to try and decide which was left and right. And I still managed to write left and right on the wrong blooming welly. So that did me no good. So it's just stupid things like that. And I know like I can make a laugh and joke out of not knowing my lefts and rights now. And I'm constantly kind of holding my hands up and going, well, which one's left and which one's right? Um, and that is kind of funny, but it does still fill me with dread if I have to find any location anyway. I'm still like, oh God, how am I going to get there? But I think it's just given me the permission to be a lot kinder to myself and not be so hard on myself, because I know now why I struggled. I think that's kind of what that did for me.
It seems a common, I've spoken to many people, and it seems so common that a lot of people, when they get to a certain age, get to the point where they don't go and get themselves tested for that
Yeah,
exact reason. The fear they've not got it.
yeah,
Because if there's not something there that they can be labelled, it's a bit like going with a physical ailment to the doctors and knowing there's something not right, but then getting there and being told it's not what they think it is, but they still don't know what it is. And it's like, hold on a minute. And it's a bit like that, you know, if you go and they turn around and say, no, we can't find you've not got dyslexia, or, you know, Erlen's, which is a new one that came through my children I'd never heard of, and various things, you're thinking, well, how do we fix that problem? Because if we don't know there's a problem there, then like you say, you have that instant label on yourself, I must just be thick. So there's that fear of going, I'd rather be not known to be thick than to solve the problem. And it's crazy because, you know, there is obviously usually something wrong there. And either way, whether it's just and it's not a lack of intelligence, there's usually always a reason why your learning's been stunted. And it's going to be 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something like a dyslexia or an Erlen's or something of that nature. And I think that's where everybody just needs to be a little bit braver. But by you finding that out, obviously, did that feel then a weight was lifted slightly, that you could at least start, you know, using the skill sets and figuring out how you could tackle that dyslexia? And were you also open with your team members at that point that you had dyslexia and be aware of that? Did you actually advertise your new label as such?
I absolutely did. I wore it like a big, massive, shiny badge. And I was like, I'm dyslexic. And I told everybody that I was dyslexic because I was like, do you know what? I am actually thrilled that I'm dyslexic because it no longer feels like a negative thing. It feels like I've got a label for something that I can now go and research. I can understand all of the things that I've struggled with. And at that point, I didn't really know about the strengths of dyslexia. I just kind of knew some of the challenges. So while it was kind of easier to identify the challenges at first, because I'd been living that life, I then surprised myself by finding out what some of the actual strengths are of dyslexia. I was like, wow, okay, so this is where my creative brain comes from. This is where the big imagination comes from. This is where the empathy comes from. Like all of these things that I knew that I could do and could do really well. I was like, that has blown my mind that those things have come from something that has always felt so negative in my life. And that diagnosis really triggered like a discovery of who I am, because I had no idea who I was at that point. I was a tired, stressed out mum of 2 who had just gone through really brutal postnatal depression and had just had a really awful time with things having children because of postnatal depression, which actually I found out later on, if you're neurodiverse, you're more likely to have a risk of depression. So that kind of all ties into the same thing of like, well, if I'd known all of this stuff sooner, maybe that wouldn't have been such a battle for me as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so many other things to add on to, like you said, the dyslexic thinking on top of all that, just, you know, with what you've just said there with postnatal depression and things like that. But by at least knowing that exists, you could at least tackle that. By knowing you had dyslexia, you knew there was other challenges being added, and then ADHD to add, and it just sort of, I guess it compounds on top of each other, the amount of stress and you know, the way you think differently. But what I noticed out of that comment was, out of having what you thought was a disability, which is what you get told at school, oh, you've got to go to a special needs class to go and do extra reading, extra writing, and it's deemed as this special need. I've certainly learned, and it's certainly come out of what you've just said there, is you've realised actually it isn't a special, it's a different set of skills. It's not, you may have lost one, yes, the reading and the writing, but actually from that you are way more perceptive when it comes to, you know, sort of seeing things visionary. I find everybody's, you know, got big ideas and big grand ideas, and we need everybody to put these things into place. But the ideas that come out of your head, my head, and other people with these sort of skill sets are sometimes a little bit crazy and wild, I imagine. It can be way beyond what other people can think. But it's a nice, you know, set of skills with the creativity, with all the things you've just mentioned there that you don't think about. And I think it's only when you then start doing your own research, you then start realizing the amount of people in the world that are dyslexic. There's, what is it, 1 in 5 people are dyslexic, 1 in 3 entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So you have these things where you're looking at all these, a lot of people now are looking up to all the entrepreneurs and having your own businesses, and you look across the board from your Richard Bransons through to your actors like Tom Cruise and all these different and when you start sitting down, the amount of people that now are talking about having all these different sort of neurodiversities starts making it normalized to say, well, actually, I'm proud of these, and these are now the skill sets. Talking of the MOD, GCHQ actually have, prominently do look for people with lots of different skill sets, because when it comes to these sort of things, they need to have a varied spectrum of ways of thinking, and we can see patterns, we can see code, we can see things in different ways than various other people in different sort of, let's say, labels as such. So obviously it sounds like it lifted the weight off your shoulders. You were proud to, and not everybody still is. People who find out still go, right, well, that's my label, but I'm still protective of it. But it seems like you shouted. So that leads nicely into, so what took you from finding out about that, working where you were, to suddenly then being, one of the co-founders of the, I'll get it the right way around, Defence Dyslexic Network, because being dyslexic, I get it the wrong way around.
So I got my diagnosis, and I was very proudly shouting it about. And one day there was me and a couple of people having a bit of a hushed conversation by the kitchen area. And like somebody was like, "Are you dyslexic then?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And then we just started having a conversation about it. And it sort of snowballed from having a bit of a conversation about it to, should we create a network? Like, why are we having these hushed conversations, like hiding behind pillars saying we're dyslexic, when actually, why are we doing that? So let's create a network. Let's see, if we can get a bit of interest and get a few people together. And I sort of discovered, I think there were about 5 of us in total at the beginning. Discovered 5 of, like, a few other people, and I was like, let's just see how we get on. Put an invitation out there, and we did. We had no idea what we were doing. There was a mixture of civil servants and a few military people. We had literally no idea what we were doing. We just thought, well, we'll just make it happen. In grand dyslexic thinking style, we just went for it. We had no clear plan. We had nothing written down, but we were going to go for it. And we launched the network. And we thought, do you know what? It'll be really good if like 20 people come to this call. Because it was during COVID as well, so it had to be online. And then we had over 100 people join the call. And we were like, this is brilliant. 100 people, amazing. And it kind of snowballed then, because actually people were interested in dyslexia. People were interested in kind of understanding more about dyslexia, but also understanding what their dyslexic journey was, or if they were dyslexic. So we had people coming to us who were in their kind of later years of their career, and they were like, do you think there's any point? I'm in my 60s, is there any point? And I was just like, absolutely, because if you can get the answers to the things that you've been asking yourself repeatedly throughout your life, then why wouldn't you? If that can give you a little bit of peace of mind and give you an answer to why you've struggled, then that is better to find out than always question. So we've supported so many people just to get diagnosis and understand themselves. But we've also supported people through being able to talk about it and not hiding it. Because a lot of people, especially in the military will definitely have the opinion that it's not really to be shared. And we've had some quite senior people come out as being dyslexic for the first time in the network because they've never wanted to tell anybody because of it potentially affecting their career. And you think, such senior people, having to have hidden this for so long to then, come to us as a network and be like, because of this network, we've been able to just be ourselves.
Do you think those people, and while we're chatting, there is another podcast we did with Kurt, and so please go and after watching this, watch that one, because that is somebody who's lived that life, and he's the chairman of this network. So it's well worth listening to his journey. But I think a lot of people generally, like you've said, and I've done, you sort of protect yourself. You sort of feel like, certainly the more you go up the ranks of any business, you feel like you've got to look the tough one, and it feels like you're being weakened by admitting that sort of, I've got dyslexia. So it must be, I'll be honest, it must be 10 times worse in that very sort of military defence field for anybody, because there's no other environment tougher than making yourself look, tough, with your colleagues and things like that. So it's amazing that you've just said some of those leaders at a very high level, because I think the more they do it, the more it will show the people at different. So I think the higher up you can get, the better that story will be told. So that's amazing that what you've done is already bringing out those people that must be giving the confidence to people at a younger age, to come out and say, yeah, I think there may be something not right here. Can I be tested? And then they get that support and understanding, because I think that it's not just about finding your diagnosis and then saying, what do I go about it? It's also other people being a little bit like, don't just take the mick out of the way I've spelt something because I've just accidentally mistyped or there is a reason for it. Yes, you can have sometimes a little bit of fun, because sometimes I read things and I can chuckle to myself after I read something, and my wife or somebody else can say, what are you laughing at? I've gone, well, I've just read that this way, and I know it's not because I've just reread it, but it sounds funnier in my version.
I can get aboard with that one.
You don't have to be too uptight about these things. You can still have a bit of a joke, but I think as long as people are aware of your dyslexia, they can then go, right, well, hold on a minute, let me help that person. And I got support when I was working in some of the large industries and things, and that's what it is. It's getting support from those senior people to say, yep, I've also got that, and it's not a problem. How do you need us to help you? So obviously with the network now, you said 100 the first time round, and was that a mix of office people and people across, in active service, or?
Yeah, complete mixed bag of people rocked up online and listened to us talk. I think we did 2 hours that day, and we were all like, oh my God, amazing. We had 100 people. And we were like, well, do you know what? If the network sustains that kind of number, then we'll be happy. If we just have one person, we'll be happy. For me, I wanted to have an environment where we could have people coming in for the first time, not having to have that phobia of going, I'm dyslexic, you support me. Like I said about my son earlier, I didn't want him to come to a workplace and ever think, oh, I can't say that I've got these challenges, I need this support. I want him to be able to come in and on the first day somebody says to him, how can we support you? Not him having to battle it. And I don't think he's ever going to work his dash job like I do. But there are going to be other kids out there like him coming into the workforce for the first time. And I think everybody should have that opportunity. And I think we all had our own kind of personal reasons for setting up network in the first place. But, for me, that was kind of it. And it's kind of snowballed since then. I just looked the other day, actually, and we are now 4 years old as a network, and we've got 2,000 members. And I was just like, wow. 2,000 members in 4 years. I mean, some people might go, well, you've not grown that fast now. But I think that's amazing.
No, that is amazing, and considering that that school teacher back who said you'd never get your name in the press, and suddenly you've achieved what you have in what is a very tough field of work with inside a very tough field of sort of like people that you work with, because it's such a diverse group of people. Whenever you work in those kind of environments, everybody just assumes it's all military this or military that, but it's not. It's a broad spectrum of people who are in procurement, HR, all sorts of different roles, as well as those people who are, training every day and going onto the front line in different guises. And, and from that, then you've grown this network and it's starting to escalate. You got the woman, is it the Woman in Defence Inspirational Woman Award? Is that how it was? 2023?
Yeah. So it was the network. So I do the network as a voluntary thing on the side of my actual day job. And I do it because I love it, obviously. I call it my happy place. But the award, so at the time, the co-chair was a guy called Simon, and he was a major in the army, but he's left now. He nominated me for it, and I don't know. I think we'd kind of discussed it a little bit, and I'd not really thought about it. And then I ended up being shortlisted for it, and I was like, "Oh, that's really nice." I didn't really think anything more of it really because I just thought, I'm proud of the network. I'm proud of everything we do with the network. I'm proud that we, propel it forward and we get it in front of people. But it's just a good thing to do, like, you know. Um, and then I got shortlisted for it, and I was a bit like, oh, brilliant. I'll happily take home a shiny bit of silver that says I've been shortlisted for this award. Nothing else is going to come of it. Um, and I made it to the finals, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay, brilliant! I get to go and have a really nice dinner somewhere." And because of my neurodiversity, I have sensory issues, and I'm a really picky eater. So actually, that terrified me too, because I thought, "Well, what am I going to eat?" Um, it turns out I was fine, but it's kind of like, yeah, that kind of thought. I was like, well, I'll go and chat to some people. I'll have a lovely time. And I did have a lovely time. And I did chat to loads of people. And I opened people's minds up to what dyslexia was. And I can remember standing on the stage just before they sort of announced the winner. And I was like, I'm stood next to some really amazing women. Like, reading what they've done to achieve, to be stood on this stage next to me, I was like, absolutely no way I'm going to win this award, because these other women are just amazing. And then like when they read my name out, I was like still clapping, and I was like, was that my name? Like I absolutely did not expect it to be me. 100% didn't expect it to be me, because I was just like, this is just a good thing to do. Like, it's not something above and beyond that, people do, but it kind of reframed that, I think, a little bit for me, because actually I was thinking, well, I suppose how many people do go out of their way to just make a bit of noise, a bit of disruption about something that really is important. Um, and then I took away a nice shiny bit of glass that I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And now I get to tell people I'm an inspirational woman. And I quite like that. And I can make a nice little laugh and joke about it. I don't take praise very well, which you've probably noticed, because I still deflect it now. People are like, well, talk about the award. And I'm like, oh, but I can't talk about the award. But actually, if I can talk about it in a positive thing of like, well, actually, I'm going to talk about it because it's going to get you talking and thinking about dyslexia, then I will deflect it to that, because that seems so much easier for me to talk about than my own sort of personal achievement with, all the hard sort of stuff that we've been through with the network. We kind of went on the approach of, we'll ask for forgiveness rather than permission, because, it just seemed like the right thing to do, and we all really believed in it. At the time, there was somebody in the committee with us, and he used to say, "Be more like Lisa, be more Lisa," because he was like, "Well, if more people were more like you and had the same sort of like opinions and kind of drive to do things, then we'd have a better kind of world." And I was just like, "Okay, that's kind of a nice thing to say, but." Yeah, and he used to say it all the time, and I never really thought about it. But yeah, be more Lisa, apparently.
Yeah, but again, like you've just said there, you sat there and judged yourself against those other amazing women who were up for the award. But no doubt they were sat there next to you, all doing exactly the same, thinking about you with the other women, and every one of those people would have thought the same. You clearly deserved it, and on top of that, like you're right, you've stuck yourself into that place where you were uncomfortable. You didn't know if you'd like the food. You didn't know if you wanted to be there, but you've took yourself out of that position and gone, but actually for the greater good, I want to be there. Well, that again is showing, you're pushing things forward. And I
Yeah,
can imagine this is not extra easy adding to your day of being, at work, doing everything you've got to do, being a mum, those things are 10 times extra levels on top of your day already. And then you've
yeah,
just gone and added an extra thing where you're wanting to help, 2,000 at the moment, 2,000 other people now, because of you, are now going through different things within this dyslexia and finding those things out. So,
yeah,
those are amazing things, and you should be proud of those, because they are things that you don't think of, but when you've been put up for that award, that was the reason why. And I think the good thing is, like you said, from there it then really does promote what you're doing to a wider audience. And And I suppose really we're getting closer to the end now, but from that, what would you say for other leaders listening to what we're saying now, whether it's within the MOD or a wider, network, it can be out to, enterprise, it can be, any of those kind of big leadership roles. Because I think the more we can get some of the big leaders, individuals coming down that chain, we've got more of a chance that if there's one big leader in a position, it could span out and give you that sort of knock-on effect. What would you say to them to help them sort of like promote getting people seen and maybe tested for dyslexia?
So dyslexia is absolutely something that we can unleash. So our theme for this year is unleashing the power of dyslexia. And it absolutely is. With just the right level of support, the right understanding, you can unleash the power of dyslexia. For me, having the support of AI tools now, I can do so much more. My ideas just fly out of my brain and I can just ramble onto the tool. I will just talk to it and be like, I need to do this and I need it to be like this and this and this. And it will take my ramble and create what is in my brain. And that absolutely just blows my brain, because honestly, a lot of people are like, oh, AI is such a dangerous tool, it's this and it's that. But actually, for us as dyslexics, it is the key to unlocking us and our abilities, because actually you are going to get a force to be reckoned with. I think once we have our ability to just fly and that level of the support behind us to back us, I just think don't be afraid to let us fly. Let go of the strings that are kind of like tying us down and tethering us, because we will absolutely be in the position where we can come up with the ideas and the strategies that are going to help push everything forwards in the future. Just give us that little bit of belief and that trust. I think that's what I would say.
I totally agree. And I think to add to that, on all those tools that you've just mentioned, I genuinely think this time for anybody with any sort of like skill sets where we have struggled to write and get those brain ramblings, out of our heads onto the page. I think it's a really great time to actually say, hold on a minute, we can really rapidly move forward, because the thing that's been holding us back, we've now got a tool set that can actually eliminate that problem to a certain extent, and all our future forward thinking ideas can be put into these tools to help us get them out so that others can understand them from our sometimes we may run ahead of ourselves to try and explain it and things like that, when now we can bring it back and explain. So I would now say to those leaders, we're you need to look to actually make sure there's people on your team with these diversities, because there's an actual huge benefit, and there's going to be even more so in the next 5 to 10 years, where those skill sets are going to be, creative thinking is going to be the one thing AI can't necessarily replicate yet. It can do the mundane jobs, it can do those tasks that we struggle with, but where that visionary and creative thinking comes, like you've just described, is going to be really, really wanted within the workplace, and even more so across defence and the MOD.
100%. And I think that it's coming. It's not going to be long before dyslexics are going to be the key to opening the universe.
Yeah, and I think also as well, if people aren't aware as well, there's you can now add dyslexic thinking to your LinkedIn profile. That's something you can add as a skill set. I've got that on there now, and that came from the Virgin University of Dyslexia, if I've got it the right way around. Kate Griggs.
Made by Dyslexia.
Yeah, and I've been a part of that program as well. So it's great that we can now be proud and put that label, that we're proud of that label. It isn't to hide behind. It's something we should be proud of, because it's showing our skill sets, minus the other issues that we're challenged with. And like I said, technology is helping us there. So I think we're coming towards the end. So I really want to sort of thank you first of all, but obviously, certainly within the Defence Network, how does somebody within the MOD and Defence reach out to that network? Is the LinkedIn page? Tell us how they can reach out to you to find out more.
So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn posting stuff. But if you are in Channel to MOD, you can find us on the SharePoint and contact us that way. But if not, just look me up on LinkedIn. You'll find me.
No, that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time today and sharing not just obviously about the network, but obviously your story and a lot of personal things on how you got to where you are today. So, no, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.